My husband offered me $150,000 to surrender our newborn twins to his mistress.
Sign it, take the money, and disappear.
So I signed, because the trap I'd prepared for 6 months was finally ready.
The night my husband tried to buy our newborn twins from me, his entire family watched as if they were attending an auction. He pushed a check for $150,000 across the table. His mistress smiled and whispered, "Sign it, take the money, and disappear." So I signed. Then I picked up both babies and vanished before midnight. What none of them knew was that I had spent the previous 6 months preparing for that exact moment. Hello, my name is Claire Bennett, and this is the story of how my husband's family mistook my silence for weakness and lost almost everything because of it. I met my husband, Grant Holloway, when I was 28. At the time, I worked as a compliance analyst for a regional bank in Chicago. Grant was charming, confident, and always perfectly dressed. His family owned Holloway Medical Supply, a company that sold equipment to private clinics across 3 states. On our third date, Grant told me he loved that I was calm. "Nothing shakes you," he said. Back then, I thought it was a compliment. The years later, I realized he had simply decided that I would be easy to control. For the first 2 years of our marriage, life felt almost perfect. We bought a house in a quiet suburb. We traveled. We talked about children. Grant's parents, Richard and Elaine, treated me politely, though never warmly. His younger sister, Vanessa, called me the bank clerk, even after I explained that my work involved investigating financial irregularities. The Holloways cared about appearances more than truth. Every dinner was arranged like a magazine photograph. Every family problem was hidden behind expensive curtains. Then I became pregnant with twins. Grant cried when I showed him the test. At least, I believed those tears were real. He lifted me off the floor, laughed, and promised he would protect us forever. For the first 8 weeks, he came to every appointment. Then his behavior changed. He began staying late at the office. His phone was always turned face down. When I entered a room, he ended calls. He claimed the company was negotiating a major hospital contract, but the details never made sense. One night, when I was 14 weeks pregnant, Grant left his tablet on the kitchen counter. A message appeared on the screen. It said, "Once the babies are here, we can finally be a real family." The sender's name was Sabrina Cole. I knew Sabrina. She was Holloway Medical Supply's director of marketing. She had attended our wedding. She had once hugged me at a Christmas party and said Grant was lucky to have me. My hands went cold, but I did not confront him. That was the first decision that saved me. I took a photograph of the message. Then I opened nothing else. I knew enough about investigations to understand that anger makes people careless, but patience makes them visible. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched. The Grant said he was going to Milwaukee for business, but a toll road notification placed his car near Sabrina's condominium. A restaurant charge appeared on our joint card on a night he claimed to be in a board meeting. When I casually mentioned Sabrina, he became defensive before I had accused him of anything. Then something stranger happened. Grant's mother began asking detailed questions about my prenatal care, not normal questions about my health. She wanted to know whether both babies were boys, whether their names would include the Holloway surname, and whether I had signed the hospital's parentage forms. At dinner one Sunday, Elaine placed her hand on my stomach and said, "These children will secure the family's future. Not our future. The family's future." That night, I searched the public probate records connected to Grant's grandfather. What I found changed everything. The Holloway Family Trust controlled 41% of the medical supply company. Under an old and deeply outdated provision, Grant would receive voting control when he had biological children. Until then, control remained with an independent trustee. The twins were not simply grandchildren to them. They were leverage worth millions. I contacted a family law attorney named Maya Ortiz. I met her during my lunch break and told her everything. Maya listened without interrupting. Then she said, "Do not sign anything they give you. Do not leave the marital home without a safety plan, and document every conversation you legally can." She also told me something important: no private contract could turn children into property. Custody, adoption, and parental rights required legal procedures and a judge's review. A check across a dinner table could not buy a baby. But Maya suspected the Holloways were planning something more complicated than a crude purchase. She was right. At 21 weeks, I received a call from the payroll manager at Grant's company. Her name was Denise. We had spoken several times at company events, but we were not close. She asked if we could meet somewhere private. Denise arrived at a coffee shop carrying a folder. She looked terrified. Grant told accounting to put Sabrina on the executive insurance plan as his domestic partner, she said. When I reminded him that he was married, he told me to change the records and keep quiet. Inside the folder were copies of emails, altered benefit forms, and payments to a consulting company owned by Sabrina's brother. The payments totaled more than $600,000. Denise believed Grant and Sabrina were moving company money into hidden accounts. Richard Holloway had approved several transfers. Why bring this to me? I asked, her eyes filled with tears. Because they are preparing to blame you. According to Denise, Grant had begun telling the board that I had accessed company banking information through my job. He was creating a story in which I would appear to be the person behind the suspicious transfers. The affair was only one layer of the betrayal. My husband wanted my babies, my silence, and a convenient criminal suspect. I felt the twins move inside me as Denise spoke. In that moment, my fear became something harder. I was no longer trying to save my marriage. I was building a case. Maya connected me with a forensic accountant and a licensed private investigator. I changed every personal password. I opened an account at a bank Grant did not use. I placed copies of my identification, medical records, and evidence in a secure location. I informed my doctor privately that I feared pressure from my husband's family and restricted who could receive information about my appointments. Most importantly, I continued behaving as though I suspected nothing. Grant became kinder as my delivery date approached. He brought flowers, he rubbed my feet, he painted the nursery. The performance was so convincing that sometimes I lay awake wondering whether I had misunderstood everything. Then, at 30 weeks, I heard him speaking in the garage. "She'll take the money," he said. "Claire has no close family here. Once she signs and leaves, Sabrina and I can present the twins together. The trust only cares that they're mine." Richard answered, "And if she refuses?" Grant laughed softly. "Then we use the financial evidence. She can fight for custody while defending herself from a fraud investigation." I stood behind the kitchen door with one hand over my mouth. Grant's next sentence nearly stopped my heart. "A frightened mother signs anything." I returned upstairs before they saw me. In the bathroom, I locked the door and allowed myself to cry for exactly 5 minutes. Then I sent Maya a message. They confirmed the plan. The final 6 weeks of my pregnancy were the longest of my life. Our investigator discovered that Sabrina had been telling friends she was expecting twins through a private surrogate. She had even created a hidden online baby registry. The nursery in her condominium contained 2 cribs with the names Noah and Lily painted above them. Those were the names Grant and I had chosen. She was preparing to erase me before my children had even taken their first breath. Meanwhile, the forensic accountant traced the missing company funds through 3 shell businesses. The records pointed to Grant, Sabrina, and Richard. Someone had used copies of my professional credentials in an attempt to connect me to one account, but the digital timestamps showed that the documents had been created while I was at a prenatal appointment. We gave the evidence to the company's independent trustee and to the appropriate investigators. We did not warn the Holloways. I wanted the truth to arrive at the moment they felt safest. The twins came 3 weeks early during a thunderstorm. Noah was born first, tiny and furious, with a cry stronger than I expected. Lily followed 4 minutes later. When the nurse placed them beside me, the world became quiet. For one beautiful hour, there was no betrayal, no investigation, and no revenge. There were only 2 warm faces and the promise I made to them. "I will never let anyone treat you like property," I whispered. Grant arrived carrying flowers. Sabrina came to the hospital claiming she was delivering paperwork for the company, but security refused to let her onto the maternity floor because of the restrictions I had filed. Grant was furious. "You embarrassed me," he said. I looked at my newborn son sleeping against my chest. "Today is not about you." His expression changed for a second. The loving husband disappeared, and I saw the man from the garage. Then the mask returned. 2 days later, I went home with the babies. Grant suggested a family dinner to celebrate. Maya advised me not to go, but by then we knew the Holloways planned to present their agreement. We needed a clean copy and clear proof of their pressure. So we prepared carefully. My friend Rachel waited nearby with an infant car seat in her vehicle. Maya remained available by phone. A process server was on standby. I wore a small device that preserved the conversation in a way my lawyer had confirmed was lawful under the circumstances. My hospital bags were already packed with everything the babies and I needed. At 7 that evening, I entered the Holloway mansion carrying Noah and Lily. The entire family was waiting. Richard sat at the head of the dining table. Elaine wore pearls and held a glass of champagne. Vanessa leaned against the fireplace with a smug smile. Sabrina sat beside my husband as if she already belonged there. There was no dinner. Only a leather folder and a check. Grant did not ask me to sit. "We've decided on the cleanest solution," he said. Sabrina folded her hands. "The babies need stability. Grant and I can give them the Holloway name, the right schools, and a proper family. I looked at her. They already have a mother. Elaine sighed as if I were being childish. Claire, let's not make this emotional. Not emotional. She was discussing the removal of 2 newborn children from their mother, and she wanted me to behave like we were negotiating the sale of a car. Richard pushed the folder toward me. You will receive 150,000 immediately. You will move out of state, avoid the press, and cooperate with future custody proceedings. In return, we will not submit evidence of your financial misconduct to the authorities. There it was, the threat. Grant placed the check on top of the papers. This is more than fair, he said. Sign it. Take the money and disappear. Sabrina smiled at my babies. We'll take good care of them. I wanted to scream. Instead, I asked Grant to hold Lily while I read. He reached for her, but I stepped back. No, I said. I changed my mind. For the first time, uncertainty crossed his face. I placed the folder on a side table and read every page. The document was a proposed marital settlement and statement of intent. It attempted to make my payment conditional on supporting Grant's future custody petition. It also required me to admit responsibility for unnamed financial transactions. Maya had predicted that clause. I removed the final page and signed only the line acknowledging receipt of the proposal. Beside my signature, I wrote received under protest, no consent to custody transfer or admission of wrongdoing. Grant barely glanced at it. He was too excited by the sight of my signature. Wise decision, Richard said. I picked up the check but did not endorse it. Then I placed it inside the folder with my copy of the agreement. Sabrina stood and reached for Noah. I moved away. The agreement says I leave, I told her. It does not say the babies stay tonight. Grant's smile vanished. Claire. Courts handle custody, remember, I said. You'll hear from my lawyer. I walked toward the front door. Grant followed me and grabbed the handle before I could open it. You are not taking my children. I looked directly at him. Then explained that to the 2 police officers outside. His face went pale. Through the glass, blue lights flashed at the end of the driveway. The officers were there to keep the peace, while I collected essential belongings under the safety plan Maya had arranged. Grant released the door. I left with both babies. By midnight, we were in a secure apartment rented under my name. The check remained untouched in an evidence envelope. The agreement, the recording, and the written threat went straight to Maya. At 9 the next morning, Grant filed an emergency custody petition. He claimed I was unstable, dangerous, and preparing to flee the country. At 10:15, Maya filed my response. It included his messages to Sabrina, the surrogate lie, the hidden nursery, the coercive proposal, the threat to frame me, and the evidence that his family viewed the twins as a path to corporate control. The judge denied Grant's emergency request. He received supervised visitation until a full hearing could be held. But family court was only the beginning. 3 days later, the independent trustee called an emergency board meeting at Holloway Medical Supply. The Grant and Richard arrived expecting to activate Grant's trust voting rights using the twins' birth certificates. Instead, federal investigators and company attorneys were waiting. The trustee suspended both men. The board froze the questionable accounts. Sabrina was terminated and escorted from the building. Denise entered the conference room with her original records and told the truth. The Grant called me 17 times that day. I answered once. Tell them this is a misunderstanding, he demanded. You can fix this. I rocked Lily gently while Noah slept beside me. No, Grant, I said. For 6 months I was fixing it. He became silent. That was the moment he finally understood. My calm had never meant I was helpless. My silence had been the sound of evidence being collected. The investigation lasted almost a year. I will not pretend it was easy. There were depositions, sleepless nights, medical appointments, and legal bills. Grant's family attacked my character. Elaine told anyone who would listen that I had stolen her grandchildren. Sabrina claimed she had been manipulated. Richard insisted every suspicious payment was a legitimate consulting expense. But records do not become confused. Dates do not feel family loyalty. Money leaves a trail. The forged documents intended to frame me led investigators directly back to Grant's office computer. The hidden transfers were connected to Richard's approvals. Sabrina's brother admitted that his consulting company had performed almost no real work. Grant eventually pleaded guilty to financial crimes connected to the scheme. Richard accepted a separate agreement and lost his position permanently. Sabrina avoided prison by cooperating, but she was ordered to repay a large portion of the money, and became the witness who confirmed that Grant had promised her my children. In family court, the recording from that night mattered more than their expensive lawyers expected. The judge heard Elaine say the babies would secure the family's future. He heard Richard threaten me with false evidence. He heard Sabrina speak as though my twins were already hers. And he heard Grant tell me to take the money and disappear. I received primary legal and physical custody. Grant's contact remained restricted and supervised, subject to strict conditions. I also received my fair share of the marital assets, not their insulting check. I never deposited the $150,000. Maya returned it during the proceedings, still sealed in its evidence sleeve. Months later, Elaine asked to meet me. She arrived without pearls, without a lawyer, and without the confidence she had shown at the mansion. I only wanted what was best for the family, she said. Noah and Lily were asleep in their stroller between us. I shook my head. That was your mistake. You thought the family was a company, the twins were assets, and I was an obstacle you could pay to remove. She began to cry. Once, those tears might have softened me. But motherhood had taught me the difference between forgiveness and access. I could release my anger without reopening the door. I stood and pushed the stroller toward the exit. They may know you one day, I said. But it will happen safely, honestly, and on terms that protect them, not your name. Today Noah and Lily are healthy, loud, curious children. We live in a smaller house, filled with more laughter than the Holloway mansion ever held. Denise found a new position and became one of my closest friends. Maya still sends the twins' birthday cards every year. As for me, I return to compliance work. I now help companies build systems that protect employees who report wrongdoing. Sometimes people ask how I remained so calm while my marriage collapsed. The truth is, I was not calm every moment. I was terrified. Courage did not remove that fear. It simply gave me something useful to do with it. Grant and his family believed money gave them the power to decide who mattered. They believed a mother recovering from childbirth would be too frightened to fight back. They saw my signature and thought they had purchased my surrender. But I had never signed away my babies. I had only signed the receipt for their own destruction. And that is the lesson they will remember long after the money is gone. Never mistake a quiet woman for a defeated one, especially when she is standing between her children and the people who tried to put a price on them.